sure that everyone in this room has had the experience of receiving an invitation in the mail, be it to a wedding or a birthday party or a benefit, and you usually get these months in advance of the actual occasion. So we send in our RSVP, yes, and we mark it on the calendar, but then the day that it actually comes to the event, we say, oh, was that tonight? I'm not really feeling up to it today. I had a really rough week. I don't really feel like getting dressed and being around people today. I'm just not going to go. I've had that experience. And then I've had the experience where I said, well, you know, I've RSVP'd. I said that I'm going to be there. They probably paid for a meal for me, so I better go. But I go, but I don't show up fully because I really don't want to be there. Well, that's what this parable is about. It's about a king who says, there's a big feast that I'm throwing. This is the most amazing party, and I have invited you to come. But the people don't want to come. Now, of course, Jesus told parables, they're lessons, and they're for us. The king, of course, is God. And God has invited every single person in this room to this amazing, abundant feast. And it is a wedding with his son. Which means the feast is all of us being united with Jesus. And we will experience this amazing feast. And yet we don't really want to fully show up to it. And that is why Jesus ends this speech saying, many are called, but few are chosen. And so I want to quickly just talk about those two words, called and chosen, because we hear them so much in religious circles. We hear call, we hear this religious person, they got a calling. We hear it a lot in ministry. And we think it's something dramatic, that like the sky opened up, or an angel appeared in a dream and said, I am calling you to this great service. And we use it a lot, even here when I got this job, we announced that we have called a new pastor. And even the contract that I signed, up at the top it said, call agreement. It's about a call. But here's what I'm to tell you, and I really want you to believe it if you just take away one thing from this talk today. Every single person in this room has been called by God. All of you have been called. And what the call is it's a voice. It's the voice of God. That's why we use the word vocation. Vocation is voco, the Latin. It's a voice, it's a calling. And our job is to get still enough so we can stop listening to those voices that come from within our society, our parents, our head, that tell us that this is what we're supposed to be doing, and get still enough so we can listen to what God is calling us to do, because we've all been called. Then the second thing is chosen. And we hear that a lot in religious circles, and it's about salvation, it seems. That there are God's chosen people. We've been chosen. And it makes it seem like we're special from other people. And that's not what it's about at all. Every single person in this room has been chosen by God. So when Jesus says, many are called, but few are chosen, you've all been chosen. But you haven't chosen to accept the mission. So you'll see that the title of this talk is Mission Possible. If you remember in Mission Impossible, they said, your mission, should you choose to accept it. Well, God has a mission for you, a plan or purpose for your life, is calling you to that, but you have to choose to accept it. And that is why few are chosen, because we don't want to accept that call. It sounds too difficult. We know that any hero who goes on a mission has to face tough challenges. I was thinking when I heard this week that Malala won the Nobel Peace Prize, if she had not experienced the harm that she did, we on a global level would not have known of her mission. She had to go through that. So some of you may be saying, well, why would God be calling me, and why do I have to go through illness or the death of a loved one? Why? And it's because you have been chosen with something special, and it's always about serving the world. It's always about being God in the world, which is what Richard Rohr told us today in the words of integration. Now, the great saints who said yes to God's call, they didn't have to do that. God gave us free will. So even Mary, Jesus' mother, when the angel came to her and said, God's calling you to give birth, she could have said, no, thank you. She could have. And so can you. God gave you free will. You can say yes to God's call, or you can say no. But here's the thing. When you say no, you don't go to the feast. You don't have this rich, full, abundant life. And you know when you send in an RSVP, it says yes, that you'll be going, and then it says, I send my regrets. And if you say no and you send in your regrets, you will regret it. Because you will not be living your mission, your plan, your purpose. So we want to respond yes, even though we know that challenges will come from it, and that it won't be an easy thing for us to do. Now, what about in this story about this guy who does go to the feast, but he's not wearing the right clothes? Well, this is what I mean when we say yes to the invitation, but we don't really want to be there. We're not fully ourselves. And so I was thinking about what that means to say yes to God's call, but not really be fully into it. So you may say, well, I answered God's call. I go to church every Sunday. I'm a Christian. I wear a cross around my neck. I try to be a good person. So I'm saying yes. But this is saying being fully invested in it, fully dressed, saying yes, even though you know it will be difficult. When Richard Rohr said that all of us have been called to the same thing, it's not a special task, he meant all of us are being called to be God's presence in the world. God has no body but yours, no hands but yours, no mouth but yours. So God is using you. That's why at the UCC, you know, I wear this comma symbol. It stands for God is still speaking. God is still speaking through us. God is using us to continue His voice in the world. And we need to fully be that. Yesterday was a national event called National Coming Out Day. Many of you may be familiar with that. And on that day, it is to celebrate all LGBT people who have come out, and to encourage everyone to come out fully to their authenticity, because that's what God's calling you to be. Fully yourself, fully dressed for the abundant feast. That's what we are being called to do. You don't want to send in your regrets, because you will regret it. When I became a ordained minister, the seminary that I graduated from was founded by a rabbi. And his favorite song was a Jewish song, which when translated says, I am ready, ready, ready. I am ready, I'm fully present, and I'm prepared to serve. And we sang that at our ordination. It's about being open to God's call and choosing to respond fully. So really quickly, how do we hear God's call? Well, I said it's in the silence. That's where we hear it. Now, in a few weeks, on a Wednesday night, October 22nd, we are going to be learning about centering prayer. Centering prayer is an ancient form of meditation that the Christian mystics used to get silent and to hear God's voice. And so we're going to have a presenter come from Contemplative Outreach. These are people who teach centering prayer to the world. Is going to come here and teach us this very ancient practice of getting still so we can listen to God's voice. Thomas Keating is one of the main teachers of centering prayer in the world, and he said, silence is God's first language. Everything else is a poor translation. Silence is God's language. So we have to get silent in order to listen to that call. When we send in our regrets that we're not going to go to the feast, it reminds me when Henry David Thoreau said, most men lead lives of quiet desperation, and they go to their graves with their songs still in them. You see, your song that God created you to sing is your mission, your purpose, your calling. And I think Thoreau is right. Most people do go to their grave not having fully lived the life that God wanted them to live. So God's mission for you is not a mission impossible. I promise you, it is a mission possible, which means it's full of possibilities. And it's to a rich, abundant feast, greater than you can ever imagine. So make sure that when you hear the call, you respond and you check that box that says, yes, I am ready, I am willing, I want to be there at the feast and live my mission, my purpose. Namaste.